What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Ask Us Anything webinar. A whole bunch of questions come through today. I don't think I'm going to be able to get through them all, but I will try to get through most of them. I've arranged them in order, so our silver and gold members, their questions will go first, and hopefully if there's time afterwards, I'll answer everybody else's questions. But yeah, if you want your questions answered first, if you want the kind of VIP treatment from the BROJO coaches, enroll as a contributing member at silver or gold, and it's exactly what you'll get. Enough of all that. Anyway, let's have a look at what we've got coming up today for the questions. Got a real range all over the place. We're going to be having a look at what to do about having a depressed family member. We're going to have a look at I did a post recently about people not liking you and why that's not actually painful. I'm going to have a talk about that. Maybe have a look at what to do when you're in a relationship with somebody who's sabotaging it because of their insecurities and you want to help them. I've got questions about psychedelics, questions about journaling, questions about education, got all sorts of stuff going on. And we'll just have to see how we get on today. So, first question comes from Angie. And she says, what about having a severely depressed family member? Striking the balance right between being responsible for them versus being too involved versus being too far removed or indifferent. This is a really tricky one. This is, I think, in the same category as having a severely ill family member, like somebody who has cancer or something to that extent. Having to take care of someone who has a chronic problem, a long-term suffering that they're going through, that you have ultimately very little power over. And it can be devastating. I've been through this myself on different occasions. I won't share the details because they're other people's kind of private details. But I've been the caring family member for a couple of people, one who's severely depressed, another who was traumatized by sexual abuse, and another who had a severe injury that meant that they were basically helpless for about 6 to 12 months. So I've been there helping people with those kinds of things before. And before you even decide like what's the right balance between helping them, being too involved or being too cold or whatever, first and foremost, you have to take care of yourself. Okay. This is the biggest lesson I learned, is it is so hard to care for other people if you're neglecting your own health and well-being. And it becomes really easy to do that when you care deeply for the person who's suffering. So if you really love the person you're taking care of, it becomes easy to blur the line between help and self-sacrifice. And the thing is, they don't need you to self-sacrifice. That's not going to help them in the long run. One thing to understand is that people suffering in these ways, and I'll focus on depression because that's what the question's about, they also have the added guilt of being a burden, a lot of them. Some of them don't. Some are sort of needy or clingy or have no sort of shame about receiving support, but many of them do, especially if that person was quite independent or fully functioning before this. They're going to feel really bad watching others suffer to help them. And so you're not really helping them by doing that. If they can see that you're tired and stressed and that you're neglecting your work and that you're putting on weight simply because you're helping them, they're not going to feel better seeing that, okay? What they need more than anything is to be surrounded by healthy people. That's the most helpful thing you can do for somebody who's suffering with depression. They need that kind of counteractive force. So the chemicals in their body are saying, be sad and be apathetic and fuck everything. And so they need a counteractive force to be surrounded by people, not people being falsely positive because they can see right through that. But just people going like, look, you can get on with life. I'm doing it. See? And you don't have to say it. You just do it right in front of them. You get shit done. You're not complaining. You're taking good care of yourself. And you're not rubbing it in their face. You're not going, see, be like me. You're just showing them that you're not going to be destroyed by their depression, and so that they're not going to have that guilt, that burden of like, oh my God, not only am I a pathetic loser, I'm also hurting others, you know. And this is, this focus on putting yourself first, which is something I go on and on about, and so many people resist against me. They think it's selfish to put yourself first, and they don't realize it's actually selfish not to. You put yourself first, you take care of your shit, which is not the same as being too far removed or indifferent. You're still going to care about them just after you've cared about yourself. That's all. You know, they're second in the queue. It's not a long wait. They'll get their needs met every single day after you've taken care of your own needs. And sometimes that will mean delegation. So also there are times when you're taking care of someone and you become selfish. Now, I've seen this. I'm seeing this right now with an incident that's happening in my life, where somebody's trying to take care of their loved one, and they're so obsessed with it that they won't let anybody else help, and they won't share that burden with anyone. They've got that kind of pride or ego around it. And what they're doing is they're burning themselves out, which doesn't help the person that they're trying to support, and they're depriving others of the joy of being helpful. So there are others who want to get involved and help and spread the load around and would feel great about themselves if they could do that, and this person's preventing them from having that joy. They're essentially keeping all that good helping to themselves. And they think they're doing something helpful by doing that, but they're actually, everybody's suffering because of this. Nobody's winning. So you're allowed to take breaks. You're allowed to delegate it off to say, it's somebody else's turn to take care of her today or him today because I'm fucking knackered. I need to take care of my own shit. I'm behind on work. Somebody else step in here, and share that load around. You don't have to be the superhero who does everything. Nobody actually benefits in the long run from you trying to do that. It's time you have to put aside your ego and bring in as much support and delegate as much support as possible, which is not the same as being indifferent. You're still going to be there and you're going to care. It's just you're going to do what works rather than what makes you look like the hero. Now, being too involved is where you try to control this thing. It's where you try to fix it, where you go from support to intervention. And you've got to understand, unless you are their clinical psychologist or psychiatrist, it is not your job to intervene with depression. And unless you are an expert in the therapeutic and psychiatric treatment of depression, odds are what you think is helping doesn't. There's kind of a counterintuitive thing about depression. A lot of people think, you just need to cheer them up, you need to get them out of bed and get them moving and surround them with positivity and all that. No, that makes depression worse. You don't do that. That's counterproductive. The best thing you can do is just be there for them. And especially to not let them push you away. That's one of the most powerful things you can do for someone with depression, is just show them, no matter how fucking misery guts they get, no matter how much they just throw out spite or they're difficult or resistant or just down, you won't let it faze you. You're not going to get sick along with them. You're not going to, take this thing in to show that you are this relentless, consistent rock that they can cling to. You're the kind of the calm in the storm. And your main job is not to fix the depression, it's to make it okay. This is the key thing that a supporter can do. You leave the treatment to the psychologists and the psychiatrists. And yes, if someone is severely depressed, they should be looking at getting on medication. Absolutely. They should be seeing a psychologist regularly. Your job is to make sure that that's as easy as possible for them. You can't force them to do it, but you can, you can drive them to the sessions. You can make it easy to find who to talk to. You can constantly normalize it. That's the key. Is you got to make sure, look, whatever's going on for them, it's fine. It's okay to be like that. They don't need to get out of it. There's nothing, they're not a bad person. You got to treat it like they've got a knee injury and they're desperate to walk, and you just got to slow them down and just say, no, you're not ready to walk yet, and that's okay. You're injured. Depression is essentially a physical injury, almost definitely. Quite often it's called an illness, but when you look at what's actually happening in the brain, a malfunction of neurotransmitters, it's really no different to breaking a bone or tearing a muscle or having severe impact on an organ, brain injury. It's very, very similar. It really belongs in that category. They aren't doing anything wrong. They're not thinking wrong, or it's not because they don't live right. They don't need to be corrected, though those causal factors in depression will need to be dealt with in time. Well, they need to understand now that they're depressed, what they need is to be okay with being depressed. That's the first and most important step. If they can accept it, they're surrounded by people who accept it and go, yeah, it's normal to feel sad. And yeah, I know some days you're not going to want to get out of bed, and that's okay. I'm here for you no matter what you need, sort of thing. Then when it comes to things like, well, what people do in your situation is they go talk to a psychologist. That's what's next if you're keen to get out of this. I'm not going to force you, but that's normal. No shame in that. Tell them about the time you went and saw a therapist or whatever. But you want to be careful that you don't want to manipulate them into doing it. You just want to normalize it. It's normal to have depression. It's normal to struggle with it. It's normal to go and get support for it. Totally, totally normal. Whenever you're ready, we'll go do that normal thing. And I'm not going to push you, but it's all just normal. Sharing stories. Yeah. My friend, she just found some new medication. Now she's able to work again. It's really working well for her. Let me know if you ever want to know more about that. Just this constant, providing normality to the depression, because it's the experts will do the treatment stuff. Your job is not to treat them. That's too involved. Okay. You're not responsible for them. They're still responsible for themselves. You're responsible for being supportive. If you love them, that's your job. Not let them get you down. They're only going to get you down if you try to fix them. And I learned that personally. If you try to control this thing, make it go away quicker, you see them doing stuff that you're like, oh, you're making it worse, and you get all frustrated with them. You're like, stop doing that. That's where you're going to become depressed. You're going to catch it from them. Depression is rage turned inwards. They're very angry about something and they've turned it on themselves, and then it's just crushed them. You pushing them to change their behavior is not going to help that. You'll want to do it. You'll see them. It's like watching someone eat poison. And you're like, why are you eating the poison? Stop eating the fucking poison. And you're just like, this is ridiculous. And there'll be moments when you're working with someone who's depressed or someone who's badly injured or sick where you just see them making it worse. And I'm not saying don't intervene with that. What I'm saying is you can't control them. Okay, this is not your job to fix. But you can gently point it out. You can be like, yeah, I saw that you worked really hard this morning even though you're depressed. I'm guessing that's why you feel extra bad this afternoon. If I was you, I'd probably try to take it easy, though. Maybe if I was you, I'd do the same thing because it's difficult, And you can point out, look, you're making it worse. When I help someone with this, one of the best things I could do was actually help them realize that that's what they have. They have depression. I kept saying, look, you're tired all the time. You're burning yourself out all the time. You're sad. You're crying for no reason. As far as I know, that's what depression looks like. I think you have depression, and that's normal. Everybody goes through it at some point, unless they're a psychopath, And if they don't deal with it properly, it gets worse. So if you ever want to deal with it properly, we can talk about that. You can set boundaries, which isn't the same as trying to control them. But let's say they refuse to do what's good for them. Like a classic one with people who are depressed is burning themselves out with this big burst of trying to do everything. And no, you need to be resting and recuperating. and dealing with your issues properly, not like smothering it in busyness. What you can do is kind of take away privileges. And what I mean by that is, like, if there's something that they helped you with, they're now not allowed to help you with that until they deal with their depression properly. It's not punishment. It's just like moving a sharp object away from a child. It's like, no, you're going to hurt yourself with that, so we're going to take that away. Like if someone like sits in their room all day smoking weed, well, don't go and buy their weed for them at least. Don't enable their behaviors. A lot of people will enable depression. They will let the person do things that are actually worse for their depression because they just want the person to be happy for a little while. But that's not actually helping them. That's not actually helping them. If they do things like whatever, they binge on certain things to numb the pain or whatever, instead of going to see the psychologist and going to see the psychiatrist and taking medication, doing what they're supposed to be doing, then just at least don't enable that. You don't have to stop them from doing it, but don't pay for their Netflix if they're binging on it, and don't go out and buy them junk food or alcohol or weed or whatever. If they want to do that, they can go do it themselves. At least, hey, now they're getting up and getting out of the house. That's something. But don't enable them just because you're uncomfortable with how long they've been sad. Right? Another thing is you're going to face and some people, especially severely depressed people, you're going to face the dark possibility of suicide and self-harm. Now again, unless you are an expert, it's not your job to treat this. However, it's important to understand that people's timidity around suicide, their unwillingness to bring it up, to talk about it, to go near it, the fear of accidentally pushing the button that sets it off, actually creates a higher risk. See, suicide happens in the dark. It happens in secret. When somebody's talking about it, they're actually saying, I don't want to do it. When somebody really wants to do it, they won't be talking about it. In fact, they'll look quite happy when they finally come to that decision. A big warning sign for someone who's depressed is if they're suddenly having a good day and they're starting to it looks like they just made a miraculous overnight change. That can actually be a warning sign that they've finally decided on suicide and they're relieved of their decision. The pain's going to be over soon. So you got to be really worried about a depressed person who's suddenly okay, especially if they've got a history or concerns around suicide. If they're giving away stuff, if they're talking very pointlessly, and of course if they're specifically mentioning like wanting to die, the worst is when they specifically have a method. I would shoot myself, I would take lots of pills. They've actually planned it out. The key to helping prevent suicide is making it a really open discussion, okay? To not be timid and cowardly about having that discussion. It's a very uncomfortable discussion to have, especially if they haven't brought it up and you don't even know if they even have that risk. But to just ask them, look, you've been very depressed for a while. I need to know something. How often, or do you ever think about killing yourself? And understand that if they do, you're not going to suddenly make them do it by asking that question. Okay? You can't really make things worse for a suicidal person. You've got to understand that that's as low as a human being can go, wanting to die or wanting to hurt yourself. You're not going to suddenly pile on top of that where they'll go, oh no, you talked about it. Now I'm really upset. They're already at the most upset a human can be. You talking about it's not going to make it worse. You not talking about it, though, creates a space where it can happen in secret. You want to at least make sure, hey, if you're going to kill yourself, I'm going to watch you. I'm going to be on top of this. You're on CCTV. And if they're not willing to talk about it in whatever way, you're allowed to say things like, look, because you're not willing to talk about it, that actually makes me more concerned. So this is going to be annoying for you, but I'm now going to essentially have to treat you as someone who's high risk of suicide. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on you. I'm going to have to tell everybody else about it. I might have to report this to authority figures if it gets really bad. I might have to call in police or a psychiatric team. This isn't because I want you to suffer. It's because I want you to live. and I'm going to have to be cruel to be kind if you're not willing to talk about this, if you're not willing to go see a professional and so on. So you can set the boundary around that. Like, that's what I found. I've worked with a lot of suicidal people in my life. I found the best way to deal with it is just go wading all in. Just go, okay, suicide is a big topic. Let's talk about it. Okay, we're going to bring this out in the open. This thing is never going to be hidden in the shadows. I'm going to be the one who boldly goes into it, and I'm not going to shy away from it just because it's an icky topic, right? So, key points there. Firstly, you got to take care of yourself. Okay, this applies to anybody. Someone suffering from cancer, you've got a severely autistic child, you've got someone with depression or a chronic injury or whatever. The best thing you can do for them is be on top form yourself. Okay, if that means they have to wait, if that means they don't get their needs met immediately and they have a little delay on that, so be it. They'll be fine. They'll be all right. In fact, you'll find a lot of the times, like if they're forced into being a little bit independent sometimes, that's actually really good for them. You know, you have to play the balance by here and there, but you can actually be too helpful to someone with depression where you actually enable their kind of hopelessness, right? But if they actually have to like push themselves to do some stuff because no one's going to do it for them, that can actually be helpful for them recovering, okay, as opposed to be weighted on hand and foot, which just emphasizes the victim mentality and, of course, builds the guilt, which piles on top of the depression. So take care of yourself first. Understand that your job is to support them. It's not to fix them. It's not to control them. But also support, you know, that it doesn't mean that you run away if it gets too hard. Okay. The key is to understand, like, the hardest thing I think is you got to just not take it personally. All right. It's not your job to fix them. And what they say to you when they're feeling like that is not real. It's not something you jot down and note and say, I can't believe you said that to me. I can't believe you called me that. They've got the black dog, you know, they've got this fog in their mind that makes them essentially a different person. So nothing counts. Okay. If someone's severely depressed, they're like, just leave me alone. I hate you. They don't actually hate you. They might not even really want to be left alone. Okay, it's not personal. I see so many supporters of people with depression take what they say personally, take what they do personally. It's like, fine, if you're not going to take my advice, I'll just leave. It's like, no, they can't take your advice. Their brain isn't working properly. Would you yell at someone with Alzheimer's? It's really in the same category. So if they're like, oh, I don't want to do anything, leave me alone, you'd be like, okay, I'll be out in the lounge if you need me. No problem at all. All right. Or if you really get to know someone, you can actually take a risk and go, you know what? You say you don't want me around, but I know you pretty well. I think you actually do. So I'm just going to stay here until you push me out of the room. Right? And just show, look, I don't care what you throw at me. This depression ends with you. It's not coming on to me. I'm going to be the rock you need who doesn't get swallowed into that black hole with you. You know, I'm going to be your lifeline, your anchor. You can reach out and you'll find this healthy person sitting next to you who doesn't take it personally. That's what they need. In terms of management, one of the things you might be able to do is if you're the only person who can keep your cool and support this person, the other people in their life are being controlling or trying to fix them or, you know, scared to talk about suicide or whatever, you can become like the supporter's leader. So help others understand depression, you know, send them articles and help them find support groups and, you know, download what they can and can't know about from the psychologist and the psychiatrist and, you know, give them advice and support on what works and what doesn't. Because you might not be able to help the person with depression, but you may be able to help the people who are trying to help the person. Yeah. And that last point is don't shy away from the topic of suicide and self-harm. You'll fucking kick yourself. Beyond that, you'll hate yourself if you shied away from talking about it and then they did it. Okay. You want to make sure that if they're going to do it, you put every fucking roadblock in place that you possibly could, which is mostly just talking about and making it a really open topic. And don't be shy. If you get to the point where you're like, I'm actually scared this person's going to hurt themselves, then as your family member, as your loved one, they basically just forfeited their rights. As far as I'm concerned, I would hospitalize someone if I had to. I would take over power of attorney if I had to. I would call the police if I had to save the life of a family member. I let them hate me for 20 years for embarrassing them by dragging them into the psychiatric hospital if I had to. Because I'd rather be uncomfortable and wrong and embarrassed than be too timid to prevent suicide. I can tell you from experience, not with people I love, but with people I've worked with, I've shied away and people have gone through with it. Now, they might have done it anyway, but it definitely haunted me. Like, if I had just talked about it, would it have gone down differently? So you don't want that hanging over you, trust me. Okay, hopefully that answers the question. Very dark topic to start with in the morning. Damn. But as a final note, I'll just say, look, it's fucking hard, okay? Helping someone with chronic, long-term, severe depression, it can feel like you're fighting out of your weight class, It can feel like this thing is just untouchable. No matter what you do, you don't seem to be helping. Because you won't see that your help is just being there. That just them knowing, hey, like, no matter how fucking awful I get, the person I love won't leave me, Like, I've got that security there, this stability, this person who loves me so much that I can't push them away. They need that because they don't believe the world likes them very much, They don't believe life is fair when they're like that. They don't believe there's any point to living. And if they just go, well, look at this person just keeps coming back and they're fine with it. They love me enough to love me at my worst. It can give them just that little sliver of optimism that they might need to do the rest of the work. Okay. Moving on. Question 2 comes from Thomas. He didn't actually directly ask this for the webinar. It was an interesting one that came up on a post that I did. So I want to clarify something. So I did this post where I said, people who don't know you at all essentially ignore you. They can't help but ignore you because they don't even know you exist. And this doesn't bother you. There are billions of people around the world. They have no idea who you are, and so they ignore you. And you're not up at night thinking about that. You're not like, oh, why don't they know me? Maybe some people are, Kardashians perhaps, but most people, you don't care that, if you're living in America, you don't care that pretty much everyone in China has no idea who you are. Yet, if someone doesn't like you, you care about it a lot. It keeps you up at night. You worry about it. It's awkward. And yet their behavior is the same as if they don't know you. So you've got to start asking yourself, why does it bother me that the people who don't know me behave the way they do? The people who don't like me behave the same way, and yet that's a big deal. So Thomas Bordeaux, he didn't really understand what I mean by saying it's the same as them not liking you. I want to clarify that. What I found is when people are worried about not being liked, they seem to have this vague assumption that that will actually be something noticeable for them. That being disliked will actually be measurable. So if someone dislikes me, that they will do something that someone who likes me wouldn't do. Maybe something as extreme as violence, or something just awkward as, kind of snubbing me at the party or talking shit about me behind my back or whatever. So people often they don't really think, in my experience, they don't really have a clear idea as to what they mean about why they're scared of someone not liking them. Like, what are the actual consequences they're worried will occur? They just have this vague thing about somehow their reputation gets damaged and that affects future resources or something. Or just that there'll be some uncomfortable emotional experience because of this. Probably something like the awkwardness of bumping into an ex at a party that you guys split badly and you bump into each other. It's like that kind of feeling will come up at some point. But the funny thing is that's just not true. And when you look back over your life, you'll see it. But what you won't see is something called the availability heuristic, this bias. So there will be some times in your life where someone didn't like you, and that was very measurable. Maybe they bullied you, even though that's not actually proof that they didn't like you. It could mean something else. But let's say that they bullied you. They publicly rejected you or rejected you face to face, or, there was a very rough emotional experience right near them, right near their physical body, They talked badly about you to someone else, and that someone else believed what they said, and that person didn't like you, and so on. So you'll have some clear or even just vague sort of homogenous memories. I don't know if that's the right use of that word. I'll stop trying to use big words. Where someone didn't like you, and that was directly associated with some sort of emotional pain that you experienced. Okay. So you believe that someone doesn't like you, it hurts. Okay. But the truth is two things. One is it only hurt because you cared. It is really very unlikely that you've had many experiences of being in actual pain from someone not liking you, unless you cared about them liking you. And that's an important point here. It's the caring that hurts. Now, if you suddenly started caring about all those people who don't know about you at all, ignoring you, it would hurt. Okay? So if you started worrying about people not liking you, it would be painful. Mike, what's up, bro? Don't know if your mic's on there. Just had Mike join us. Oh, there you go. Sound coming through. So we're just tackling a question that came through, which was, I did a post saying people not knowing you is essentially the same as people not liking you. So we worried a lot about people not liking us, but their behaviors are basically the exact same as somebody who doesn't know you at all. So it's a weird thing to, be worried about. You're fine with billions of people not knowing you and behaving as accordingly. But a couple of people not liking you and behaving the same way keeps you up at night. So I was just trying to clarify what I mean by that, which is, while we do remember that the odd occasion of bullying or abuse or being publicly rejected, most of the time when someone doesn't like you, a huge percentage of the time, 95% plus, they simply ignore you and avoid you, which is the same behavior as someone who doesn't know you. So we get all worked up about a kind of a fiction that someone not liking me actually hurts, when the truth is, caring that they don't like you is what hurts. Caring about something you can't control. And I was sort of just gotten to the point where I was saying, like, if you cared that everybody in China doesn't know you, it would start to bother you. It would start to hurt. You'd be like, oh my God, I tried to post on Facebook, but they don't let Facebook there, so now they don't know about me even more. And, it would start to keep you up at night, and it'd be this big thing you cared about. But actually before that, when you had no awareness that they had no awareness, you were fine, just fine. There's actually no threat in someone disliking you most of the time. The idea that that's going to end in some sort of pain, it's actually, you suffer more imagining it than it actually taking place. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd take that even a little bit further, I think. The context where that discussion applies most in my life is with social anxiety. So it's dealing with strangers, right? So part of what held me back was this idea that before I could approach somebody, start breaking the ice, I had to know enough about them and enough about their situation and what they would be okay with our interaction being about before I could even say hello. And that kept me pretty much paralyzed for most of my childhood and most of my adult life as well. What I discovered, though, is once I stopped caring, and by that I mean just simply stopped worrying about the idea of pushing people away. I realized at some point there was absolutely no way I was going to improve my social world until I tried something. So I began trying stuff. And I had to let go of this particular fear. And what I found was quite the opposite. I found that I can't actually think of a single case in hundreds of approaches where someone liked me less after the approach. What I found was even just introducing myself, even just breaking the ice, they could now put a name to my face. I'd shown some interest in them. Maybe I'd shown a lot of interest in them. That was always better than being a stranger, every time. I think that part of our psychology as humans is that when we don't know somebody at all, we assign a whole lot of risk to them, maximum risk, stranger danger. The moment someone says hello, they're immediately at least offering friendship. And that takes away a lot of that threat immediately. The reptilian brain can relax a little bit and say, I don't know if I like them, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to try to eat me or something. And I think that was very important for me to recognize that simply saying hi could completely transform our relationship without having any idea of who they were, whether they spoke English, whether they wanted to talk to me. I didn't have to know.
Yeah, it's great to think of real life examples. This is a good example like you're bringing up, which is they didn't like you any less afterwards than they would have anyway. I've had a couple of experiences where people react sort of, in my view at the time, quite badly, quite quickly. There's a couple of key ones stood on my mind. I remember once I gave a girl a fright by coming up from behind, and she was just like, just staring at me like a horror movie for about 5 minutes. It was like the kind of most awkward one where I just like, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. You carry on with your day, like just get out of here. And at the time I was like, oh my God, like I ruined her day and now she hates me and blah, blah, blah. But I thought she was so obviously clearly socially anxious, and just a stranger talking to her horrified her. I'm like, she was already like that. Like, at least she knows which one I am. If she sees people as a threat, at least I'm like a visible threat now. You know, the very worst, she's like, watch out for that guy rather than watch out for everybody. I've had people stop me 2 seconds into me starting to talk and say, no, thank you, go away, fuck off, like that. And that's very rare, but I've had a couple of those. We're talking percentage of maybe 2% out of everyone I've talked to has behaved in some way like this. But that kind of attitude tells me like they already felt that way about strangers in general. Like they didn't have a chance to get to know me, so this can't be personal. This is a template response that they use. So that's how they were going to feel regardless of what I do. Like I haven't made things worse. I can't really make things worse unless, and you know, we won't go into this now, unless I come in with neediness and manipulation and shit like that. But I had an experience recently where I can see the confusion here, which was I had a really good friend of mine, or so I thought, from New Zealand, essentially ghost me like I'm some needy guy chasing a girl. You know, I got the same kind of response I used to get when I was really needy for girls from this guy who's supposedly like a best friend of mine. And it took me a while to catch on because it's hard when you think someone's a good friend. It took me a while to catch on like, shit, I don't think he likes me anymore. I'm seeing all the signs of someone who doesn't like me, you know, making it like really sort of vague and difficult to catch up and, you know, avoiding easy opportunities to spend time together and stuff. I'm like, I know this. I've seen this before. I've seen this from people who don't like me, and I'm seeing it now. And I just can't wrap my head around it because I didn't know what had happened in the interim that had changed his mind. Maybe he's been holding resentments. Maybe he heard something. Maybe he's just changed as a person. It doesn't actually really matter because the end result is he doesn't like me anymore, or doesn't feel strongly enough to prioritize me in any way. Now, what hurts about that is me wishing he still did. But we take that away and he hasn't actually done anything to me. He's not burning my house down. He's not, publicly broadcasting "fuck Dan" or trying to ruin my reputation. He's not actively trying to harm me in any way. He's just avoiding me and ignoring me. The same as 7 point whatever billion people are doing right now every single day. So if I'm okay with him doing that, there is no harm,
And that's a beautiful thing, really, to have other people filter themselves out. We can't guess what they feel or what their values are, or what they're looking for in their relationships. Perhaps they're very needy and don't want to be called out, you know. I find it so much easier when someone just is straight up with me on whether they like me or not. I actually really appreciate that level of honesty. It's kind of rare.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people struggle to appreciate that. It's amazing how many hours of life are wasted trying to make a bad fit into a good fit rather than just letting them go and finding a natural, spontaneous good fit. I think a lot of people don't believe in it. They don't realize the loop they're caught in. They spend so much time trying to make bad fits into good fits that all they have is like mediocre fits. And they think like that's the best I'm ever going to get without realizing you've used up all your time and space and energy in the wrong place. And you don't know where the right place is. You haven't even found it yet. Like a lot of guys, I think they get that when they go into the dance community. They spend their whole life trying to fit in with the sports guys or the academic guys or the guys from their work, and it's never really clicked because they haven't found their crew yet. They haven't found their tribe. And then they go to, say, the dance community, and they're just like, oh my God, I don't have to try at all, and people like me here. Like, I've never seen that before in my life. I didn't know that that was a possible thing. And I'm definitely not saying everyone will have that experience going dancing, but they just didn't realize they were burning themselves out in an area that they couldn't make it work. It was never going to work, and they just needed to go somewhere else. But they spent so much time trying to make bad fits like them that they didn't realize, hey, there's an easier way, But I'd like to ask you, it's been a long time since I cared about someone not liking me in any sort of active way, like trying to fix it or anything. I was a bit hurt that my friends stopped liking me just because there was no closure in my mind. I didn't know why it was happening, and I kind of clung to that for a while. Like, if I could just know why, then I can move on. But eventually I realized, hey, why doesn't matter. He doesn't. There could be any reason. Who gives a fuck? I'm not going to try and fix this. I'm not needy anymore. But what about you? Like, when's the last time you remember actually being affected by someone not liking you and it bothering you?
It's been a little while now. I'd say that for me, it was mostly about women, because I rated the way that women saw me or valued me or didn't value me or treated me very, very highly. My sense of self-worth was very strongly based on how women in particular would see me. I never had a lot of close male friends before BROJO, and didn't really care to. It didn't really affect me one way or the other. But if a woman didn't like me, like very directly, clearly expressed dislike, I'd feel devalued in some measurable way. And I can't really remember the last time that affected me. In fact, I'm not even sure that there was ever a time where there was an overt expression of dislike. There was disinterest, or there was no thank you, or there was, whatever, maybe even annoyance at some point if I was needy, but there was never like dislike. But I was always afraid of that. What I did notice is though, when it absolutely stopped affecting me. There was a situation I had not long ago, probably just a few months ago. Earlier this year, I met someone when I was visiting Wellington, met a girl there. And the relationship heated up pretty quickly. Turned out she ended up coming to Auckland a month later and introduced me to her cousin, who was very attractive and who we actually had a lot in common with. Now, obviously, that was a horribly awkward situation. I just been dating her cousin, and she knows that. Turns out that this cousin and I both go to the same yoga studio. So I encountered her there, and I actually invited her out for a coffee. I was quite curious about her, but I was curious about her for all kinds of reasons. Some of the things we discussed when I was at her house were really interesting to me. But she definitely took it as me asking her out. She definitely interpreted it that way. And that wasn't my intention at all. But she basically snapped. She got really, really upset about it. That was the closest I've come to somebody expressing dislike towards me. What was really interesting to me, like she basically said, don't talk to me again. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating because it's not about me at all. She doesn't know anything about me. She has no idea what I wanted to ask her. She absolutely misinterpreted this situation. Everything that's going on for her is 100% her. And it was fascinating to me to, for the first time ever, to see that so clearly, that it really had nothing to do with me. Could have been anybody who walked up to her. It was a bad day. She had a bad week. Her boyfriend just ditched her. She doesn't like white men. I have no idea. But I know it wasn't anything about me as a person. She absolutely had nothing to judge, right? We hadn't gotten that far. That was very freeing to realize that, wow, I feel like bulletproof, because as long as I'm honest and as long as I'm 100% authentic as to who I am and what my intentions are and what I want, and I'm respectful, I'm not going to keep pushing her. She doesn't want me to talk to her. Fine. That's no sweat off my back. It doesn't bother me at all. You know, I'll just keep going to yoga class and just to pretend she's just a stranger again, like she was before. Nothing changed. And she doesn't continue to freak out, and she doesn't like actively avoid me or throw nasty glares in my direction. It's just we're strangers again. That's fine. That was probably the most notable situation that I can describe where I felt some kind of active sense of, I don't want anything to do with you. And it didn't hurt a bit.
I think you've nailed two key points to this. One is like when someone comes and then goes away, you're actually back to where you were. This idea that something's been taken away is an illusion because you survived without it beforehand, so you never needed it. I imagine like a wave on the beach coming and then leaving. The beach is basically as it was. You know, the wave doesn't do much. But not just that. The other thing was, I think the reason people are so upset when someone doesn't like them is because they think of it as some sort of valid feedback. Like if they don't like me, I must be less as a person. There must be something wrong with me. This is confirmation of that. And this is actually, you just reminded me of how I got over this. It was actually something I learned during the pickup phase, where I was trying to overcome my fear of rejection, is to figure out, well, what are they rejecting exactly? You know, and the way that helped me was actually a very mechanical one, which was I had to figure out what percentage of my life they've known me. That's it. So I take the amount of time that we spend together, and we go, that's the percentage of my life that they've been around for. And it's always astronomically small. It's beyond calculation. There's so many zeros after the decimal point that you're going into this kind of almost like hypothetical realm of mathematics, right? If you've been alive 30 plus years and they've known you for an hour, it's almost incalculable how small that percentage is. And so I started to realize, like, well, that's how much of me was being rejected, that percentage. And also, I have to check in with who I was during that hour and how representative that was. Were they getting a good example of me, or were they getting a fake thing? And that was the first thing, is like, if I get rejected for not being myself, that isn't information at all. I can't do anything with that information. All I know is at that time, who they were in that moment didn't like who I was pretending to be. I can't do anything with that information. I don't know if they were really, that was their normal self that day or whatever. I know that they didn't like me being fake, so I don't know if they would have liked me being real. Maybe they didn't like anyone. I've got nothing I can use there in terms of personal feedback. And then if I was being me, I'm still left with the concern of, like, this might be a bad day for them. Or like in your case, this is a misinterpretation or whatever. So I can't even be sure that's me they're rejecting, even if I am being myself. Because what I'm getting is a tiny bit of me, and then all their narratives getting chucked on top of it from their whole life. Like, the amount of times that I've hit on a girl, she didn't like me, and then later on I found out she's a lesbian. I'm like, well, I had no chance. I could have been me to fuck. It wouldn't have made her attracted. It's beyond. Or, I know a couple of girls like strictly into black guys or something like that. I'm like, they were never going to, like, their feedback to me was never going to be helpful.
Mm.
But also, even if it was some sort of accurate measurement, I was being myself. They were clear-minded. They saw that. They didn't like it. Well, then all they're saying is we're not right for each other. It's not actually feedback on whether or not that's a good thing. I know girls who genuinely love psychopathic killers. That doesn't mean that what they're doing is good. It's just that her preference is fucked up, So a girl could not have a preference for me, but it's the same as somebody having a preference for vanilla over strawberry. Neither vanilla nor strawberry is better than the other. They're just different flavors. You can't say, well, if a lot of people like vanilla, it's better. So no, it's better for them. That's all you know. And you don't even know if they're being accurate. So I think that was the thing for me as I started exploring. I'm like, what feedback am I actually getting from someone not liking me? And the answer was fuck all. It doesn't tell you anything. It's random.
Interestingly, that probably also applies to people liking you. That feedback alone, too, is not really that relevant to whether you're a good person or not. Sure, a lot of people told Hitler he was the shit.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah.
I really like something you pointed out, something I think about a lot when I explore evolutionary psychology is the whole concept of people pleasing and where it comes from. I've got this theory rotating around in my head that ever since we began developing social structures as mammals, we were pretty driven to this desire of being accepted and liked by our community. And it makes some sense. It'd be pretty hard if you put a bunch of wolves together that don't know how to be friendly to each other. They're going to tear themselves apart. It's just going to be chaos. So there was this need to be accepted. And I think that underscores, at least in the mammal brain, part of the reason why we have this discomfort with rejection, this discomfort with being disliked. But is essentially that we use other people as a mirror. We see them as a validation of, am I a good person or am I a bad person? And fuck, we really learned that from our parents and our school teachers and our lawmakers and our romantic partner. All of them, if they feel we could be better or we're not living up to our potential to them, they're sure going to tell us. And that's very difficult. Conquering that does take a bit of a concerted effort to realize that, hey, it's actually not that helpful to base my life on what everyone else wants me to be. I'm pulled in 50 different directions and none of them is healthy for me or getting me where I'm going. I just feel, I make this person happy, now that person's pissed off. I make this person happy, now that person's pissed off. I like this sports team, those guys hate me. There's no way to win that game, which is why the only way out is authenticity. But it's a hard road. It's for someone who's grown up as a people pleaser, it's an entirely new game to say, I have to be my own measuring stick of my value. A lot of people don't even know where to begin.
Maybe that's worth us looking into a little bit more is when does somebody else's reaction provide some form of helpful feedback? Because I do believe there is a place for that.
You've faded way out, bro. I'm not sure if it's just for me.
Hang on. It's my microphone.
That sounds better.
This better now?
Yeah, it's a bit better. I can hear you a little bit better.
A little bit? All right. So can you hear me all right?
Just. It's definitely softer than before, though. Just letting you know, my computer or if you turned your mic down.
Let me try this. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I moved my microphone and did something. Okay. Because what's interesting is once you start becoming authentic or trying to, then you do start getting some feedback. Like one example is like, so say my wife, if she's disappointed in me, it's worth paying attention to why, because I might have actually breached my own values. She tends to be disappointed in me when I'd be disappointed in myself anyway. So she can be a mirror that's actually pretty accurate. She does know me really well. She does know what I'm trying to live by, and she is upset when I don't. Now, it doesn't mean that every time she's upset, it's valuable feedback. So sometimes I'm like, you know what, be upset. I'm okay with what I did there. But other times I'm like, yeah, you know what, I am eating too much chocolate. If she's just pointing out something I don't want to look at or whatever. And also, I'm thinking of guys who, at the beginning of their journey, if they're going out meeting strangers and they get a lot of bad reactions, they might actually, if they're getting a range of people from all over different walks of life and they're constantly getting a consistently negative reaction, there may be some feedback there that doesn't mean you're not, doesn't mean who you really are is being disliked, but it could just simply be a blind spot, like neediness is affecting you. And everybody generally reacts. In fact, the people who react positively to neediness are normally the people we need to run away from. So like, there's like, I work with, say, like guys who have Asperger's or they're on the autism spectrum. They're going to have some behavioral traits that aren't genuine in a sense, like they could change them without losing integrity. They just don't realize how off-putting those behavioral traits are because nobody's ever really given them clear, direct feedback, helpful feedback. Like a guy who never makes eye contact, for example, he may not realize that that's just killing it for him. And they can't even get to know him because they're just distracted by this guy who looks at his feet while he talks. There's just something very off-putting about that. So if you're constantly getting negative reactions from a wide range of society, different age levels, different cultures, you're not just going to one bar and meeting people, you're going all over the place. And again, this consistently negative reaction, that actually might be good, helpful feedback for you. You might be doing something just, it triggers off people's defense system. They can't even tell you what's happened. You don't know what's happened, but it's actually not about you. It's just a little behavioral thing. Or, as I've noticed, is actually you think you're going out there being yourself, but you're not. You're being needy, you're trying to get things, you're manipulative, you're secretive. And so the feedback you're getting is, hey, I can see that you're scamming me. Leave me alone. What are your thoughts like? When do you think it's somebody else's reaction is actually a helpful piece of feedback?
That's a good question. I was going to say that it's almost always, I think it's almost always a valuable piece of feedback. If you're out on the street randomly approaching people, you have to understand you're dealing with random people, right? But in general, people want to connect in general. So if you go into it with the right intentions and the right level of authenticity, and you are authentically not needy about that interaction, it generally should be well received most of the time. And it took me a while to realize that. I felt that it was very difficult to connect at the beginning. And it took me a while to understand the difference between a big smile and trying to project friendliness and honestly being in a mindset of giving. There's a difference. I thought I was being friendly. I thought I was being generous. I thought I was, non-needy. But I at least wanted validation or approval or recognition or something. And that could be felt. In the same way, I see this all the time in Auckland. People standing on the street corners handing out the flyers. I can see them from, 50 yards away, and it's immediately cringy. Creates this reaction, and he's like, oh, they want something from me. And I'll give them a wide circle, or I'll just, bullet it straight ahead. And it really helped me to see, when I reflect on how that makes me feel, helped me understand why I struggled to connect with people initially. I really had to get to a place where I was absolutely fine with them reacting however they wanted. Once that happened, that was kind of the beginning of my social journey.
Yeah, I think I yeah, tentatively agree with that. Basically, if you really are coming from a good place, most of the reactions you're going to get will at least be positive neutral. There'll be at least like no reason to react negatively. There will be some exceptions. There are some people, no matter what you come at them with, you got them at the wrong time or you got the wrong type of person and they just react badly. There's also what I'd call like positive negative feedback, perhaps, or something like that, which is um, there was a guy in high school who hated me, but it's because he was the only one who could see that I was full of shit. He just had the gift. I was a very good actor in high school. Everyone thought I was genuinely what they were seeing, and I definitely wasn't. Except some of my close friends, I sort of let them see the real thing. But this guy, he always just he didn't do anything bad to me. And again, it comes back to the point like I didn't suffer because he didn't like me. He just avoided me, but I could see it. And I was a hypersensitive, nice guy. I knew when someone didn't like me and it bothered me. But later on, he didn't love me or anything, but he changed his mind a bit about me because now I was starting to be authentic. And I kind of earned his respect much later in life when we met again for a random reason. And so him not liking me in high school was actually very helpful feedback that if I'd been seeing it for what it was, I would have said, like, the one guy who can see through my armor is repulsed by me. And it's not because he's repulsed by who I really am. He's repulsed by how fake I am. You know, this is a guy who's clearly very confident, very real, very authentic. He was very like kind of guy. He's just said what he thinks all the time. Got himself in all sorts of trouble because of that. The only one of those rare teenagers who really doesn't give a fuck what people think of them. One of the few. And if a guy like that finds me repulsive, that's actually helpful feedback. Whereas all the people who are needy and insecure found me really great to be around, that's not necessarily good feedback. I'm getting a lot of validation, but maybe I shouldn't be. And then the reverse of that, like I think of my recent friend who no longer stays in touch with me. When I really like unpack that with my wife, I started to remember all these times of these kind of warning signs that my friendship with him wasn't very healthy. He liked me for a lot of reasons that, you know, no longer apply. So there was actually a story that played out like, I can see why he doesn't like me anymore. Because what he did like about me was the unhealthy stuff that I've since dealt with. So he liked me as a drinking and drugging buddy. You know, I remember there was a time there was a girl I was seeing and he hooked up with her. There's just these little signs like this isn't the most respectful, loving friendship available. There's actually, you know, he liked it if I complained a lot. He didn't like it if I had like a kind of optimistic attitude about things. He liked the whinge. So there's all these signs. I'm like, actually, I'm being rejected by someone in a way that shows me I've changed for the good. And if I can see it as that way, it's still like, oh, you know, we had great times together and it's like they've died almost, you know, he's gone now. But actually, if he still liked me, it would mean that I still had work to do. There's possibly a way to interpret that, you know? Yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great reflection, and I've seen some similar types of reactions from people. Whereas I seek to improve my life, prove myself. I've gone through a couple different journeys in my life. One was building a really successful first business. That's probably the one where I remember this the most. There were certain friends that suddenly liked me a whole lot more because I had something to give them if they wanted, even if it was just validation and recognition. And others liked me less because I challenged them as to where they were at in their lives. I thought that was very interesting, is that it created this sort of divide. I think anytime we're changing and growing, we're going to see that among the people around us. And we have to be careful about both situations, both the people who want to get closer and the people who want to move further away, and assess why. Is there anything for me to learn there about myself, or am I just learning something about them that I didn't know before?
Yeah, I think probably the best way to sort of conclude this is the idea like someone not liking you is feedback, but it's not necessarily bad feedback.
Mm.
And I think that's the issue that this person was bringing up was this, like many people, they think if someone doesn't like me, that's definitely a bad thing. Whereas actually you don't know, it's just information, and it's information with a lot of variables.
Mm.
You know, most importantly, it tells you a lot more about them than it does about yourself. It tells you about their preferences, their mood, they might actually like you, and this is how they show it. You know, they're messed up. It doesn't tell you much about yourself, and what it does tell you about yourself isn't necessarily negative feedback. It could actually be validation that you're on track, or it could just be a little hint that you need to shift something minor amount. But especially a single person's feedback is almost completely irrelevant. You need to see patterns, themes, trends. Like you, when I started my coaching business, that had a polarizing effect with people I knew. You know, those first, you remember, who was it? It was Logan and Lance who first came to BROJO. Those guys were right on the periphery of my social circle. And then when BROJO started, they came right into the center. And there were other people who were in the center who just drifted away to the periphery when I started talking about
Right.
self-development and stop drinking and stuff, you know. So I just noticed this kind of like change of the guard. It was really interesting. There's people who I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm surprised we didn't talk more. We got a lot more in common than I could have ever imagined. And then there are others I'm just like, yeah, I don't really want to talk about all that sort of stuff anymore. I don't think we actually have anything else to talk about.
Yeah.
Mm,
I think the key realization for me about this whole topic is that when someone expresses dislike towards me, I feel very, very fortunate. It saves me a ton of time. I know now where to stop investing my effort and just invest it in somebody else. There's now one less person in my yoga class to be curious about, right? That's actually helpful. And the other thing I really like about it is it provides a fantastic mirror for me to see how I'm doing with neediness. If I just, like water off a duck's back, I didn't even get wet. I'm like, that's awesome. I love that. I like where I'm at. And particularly the more intense it is, the more intense that expression is, the better. I'm like, wow, that doesn't affect me at all. That's exactly where I want to be. Look how I've grown, right? That reflection I find very helpful. If I feel very distressed by it, that's more of a warning sign for me than anything that, hey, I've still got an attachment to what other people think. I should explore that a little bit more. Clearly, I've still got some work to do. And I'm sure I always will. I would not be surprised at all if it hurt a little bit. But I find it really beneficial, yeah, for people to just declare where they're at in your world, and you can just accept it. It's a beautiful thing. Honesty.
honesty and acceptance. Yeah, that's the key here. But I think about it. I just got this picture in my head when I used to go back when DVD stores existed. Or whatever. I'll go there and I'll be like, oh, I really want to watch that movie. And you do that tragic thing where you pull away that first box and underneath it, there's no other one. So they're sold out, They got like the cover and then underneath it's like the gray one that says that you can't hire this anymore or whatever. And there's that kind of thing like, well, at least I don't have to consider that option. I can't get it out. Like DVD stores used to eat up so much of my time because I'm like, oh, there's like 20,000 movies in here. How the hell am I going to choose one?
Yeah.
So when one sold out, I'm like, well, that's one less to think about.
Yeah.
And to actually, yeah, it's interesting to do that with people in your life. Like, if they're not really into you,
Yeah.
your job's done. They've deselected themselves. There's 7.5 billion people. It's good if a few of them deselect. It's less mental bandwidth to take up. But some people just go, but why isn't that one available? Instead of going, oh, it's just not available. Like,
Yeah.
that's
And not available right now.
Exactly. They might be around next week. Who knows? But do
Things
you
change
try and
constantly.
wait for next week, or do you go find another DVD to watch? That's the key.
Yeah.
Hey, I reckon we got time for one more if you're up for it.
Sure.
Cool. So everybody else who sent questions in, you'll go on a wait list. But we just got time for one more. And Mike will like this one. So it's from our boy Chris. And Mike and I know Chris quite well, so partly this will be a specific answer for him, I think, based on our knowledge of him. But also, it's quite a general topic that I think applies to a lot of people. So I'll read it out so Mike can hear as well. So he says, when you're in a dating relationship and the woman you've been dating for 3 to 4 months isn't being able to trust you fully and is sabotaging the relationship due to fears and unconscious limiting beliefs she has acquired from previous relationships, such as fear of abandonment, vulnerability, freedom, not choosing the right one, blah, blah, blah. What is the best thing to do as the man in this relationship? He's given a couple of options. 1, keep dating her until her fears subside. 2, confront her and make her aware about her unconscious sabotaging behaviors, such as constantly going hot and cold, being secretive and flaking. Number 3, end the relationship as she's carrying a lot of baggage that the man is not supposed to deal with. He ends with saying, fact, all of her dating relationships in the last 5 years have lasted between 2 weeks and 3 months. So, summarizing that, he believes he's with a woman who is basically sabotaging the relationship due to insecurities, and that I get the impression he believes that she does this as a pattern. She's always done this kind of thing. He wants to know, do I stay and help her with it in some way, or do I just bail?
Wow, I've got a lot to say about this. So I'll go first if that's okay. I just ended a relationship exactly like this. Just a few days ago. Situation was, the relationship, the connection had a lot of the basic ingredients, some mutual interests, good discussions, good physical connection, good personalities. We genuinely liked spending time together. But she's just in the exact same way that Chris described. She's had, I think, a series of bad experiences. I can't tell how much of them were created by her as a result of this same problem I experienced, and how many of them were she just picked the wrong guy and, ended up hurt. But she definitely approached the relationship with an expectation that it was going to fail. That was like ingrained from the beginning. Like, if I didn't text back within a couple hours, she was pretty sure I was never texting back again ever. That was it. I'd found another girl and I was, or that I was pissed off with her, and every time she did it, I'd call it out gently and say, that's ridiculous. I didn't even know you texted. I was just in a work call, how you doing, and I'd keep pursuing in a friendly way, the relationship. It became clearer and clearer to me, though, that this wasn't the right relationship for me. It wasn't just about this particular situation, which I could have dealt with and helped her with and just kept coming back and been there no matter what. And I think she would have stayed as well. It was that it created a very unbalanced investment. I would be the one pursuing her and trying to give her comfort and confidence that I was in this for the long run. And she'd be constantly backing away and putting up shields and, not going away, but still not really going into the relationship either. That isn't what I want right now. There's so many other options out there. And there are other things that I'd like to have in the relationship as well that are important to me, that are more and more important to me as I learn more about myself this year. Like someone who's really into fitness and will go to the gym with me and go running and do a bodybuilding competition, whatever, things like that. So I have to say that for me, there were several reasons this wasn't the perfect fit. But I'd have to say near the top of the list was the fact that she simply wasn't in a place that she could be a healthy part of the relationship. Me putting myself in the coaching situation where I'm helping her confront her fears, her limiting beliefs about what a relationship can be, about how honest she can be, about how trusting she can be to someone, would completely change our dynamic. I don't want to be her dad. I don't want to be her coach. I want to be her partner. she's not quite there yet. So in my case, I chose to just basically be there for her, but kind of let it cool down into a friendship. That seems to be the best situation for both of us at this point. I'm not abandoning her. I'm not loving her and leaving her, right? But I'm also not continually investing in the relationship when I know right now that's not the best place to invest my energy.
Pretty relevant example, eh? That's good timing.
Mm.
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts on this too, similar to yourself. One, the key one here is you're their partner. So if you're being forced into the coach or the dad role, and you can't prevent that from happening, then it's done. You know, it's not going to survive. That would be a very unhealthy relationship if you thrived on that or continued with that. You know, it's a very fucked up. You know, I like the word partner more and more as time goes on because it's starting to have a deeper meaning. I used to hate that word. I always thought it sounded like just so.
Yeah.
Um, but now I realize it's actually it has this great connotation of equality and support and encouragement, team. You know, my wife and I are such a team, and I've never really had it quite that strongly at all, really, with other women, and that's what made her different. I'm like, she's got my back. Like we're both facing in the same direction. We're not baggage free, but we both want to deal with it properly. And there was a critical moment, and I think this is the make or break for being in this situation. When Lucy and I were first seeing each other in the early days, she did something. I can't remember the details, but it was an image. It was something along the lines like she didn't tell me what she wanted to test if I would guess, and then she punished me for not guessing it, essentially. And this is a classic, like, immature female. This is a classic kind of move they do. Expect you to mind read and then punish you for not being able to. And I was like, okay, this is going to be an important conversation for us. So I pointed out, I'm like, look, I've seen this before. I know what this is. And this seems to be like a remnant of previous baggage that you're bringing from other guys where they didn't really care about you and you had to test if they did care about you and so on. You need to know with me, things have to change. You have to stop playing games. With me, there's a different way of having a relationship. With me, if you want something, you say it directly. And if I can't guess, it doesn't mean I don't care about you. It just means I can't read your mind, and you have to accept that. And if you want me to know what you want, you tell me, or you at least show me very obviously. It's not a measure of whether or not I care as to how well I can read your mind. It's an unreasonable thing. I wouldn't ask you to do it. And so on. We had this kind of conversation. It was really tough. I remember sitting in the cafe going, fuck, this might be our last conversation, you know. It's this real precipice of make or break. And I sort of let it just sit with that. I'm like, this is time for you to be different in relationships. Whatever you've done with your past exes and stuff, maybe you had to do it, maybe you didn't, it doesn't matter. We have to make our own rules, our new rules. We're going to do a relationship like neither of us have ever done before. We're going to create it ourselves. We're not going to follow the rules. We're not going to do what your girlfriends do with their boyfriends and so on. You know, we're not going to do what all the other people do wrong. We're going to do our own thing. But you need to be on board with that. Both of us, we both call each other's shit out. We'll both work on it together. We'll get healthy together, sort of thing. And she did. Really obviously did. Like from that moment on, she would start bringing stuff up and going, I'm doing that thing again, but, you know, blah, blah, blah. And she was actively working on it right in front of my eyes. It was amazing to see. I'm like, wow, she really is going to do it. I really didn't see that coming. And what I realized, you know, I remember there was a guy came up to me at a bar once and he said, good cunts find good cunts. That was his saying. And it sat with me. We just thought it was hilarious because he was drunk and talking to everyone. But what sat with me is kind of like, you're going to find what you are, essentially. And nobody's completely healthy. We've all got issues and baggage. But essentially, there's two types of people. You're either facing forward or backwards. So there's people with the issues and like, I want to work on this and get better. And then there's the ones who aren't like that. And when you get with someone, you have to really figure out which direction are they facing. Because if we're
Mm.
not facing the same direction, this is doomed, and you're going to get that investment imbalance. You know.
I
So yeah,
I think that's hugely relevant to the people listening to this podcast, because if you're into self-development, you're changing, you're growing, you're trying at least to move forward to a better life. If you are with a partner who is not, things aren't going to get better. It's going to be very difficult. And I've spent some time coaching guys who are into self-development for a few years now, and their partner isn't, and they're like, we're going further and further apart. I don't know what to do. How do I address this? It's a fascinating problem. um, I've never encountered that. I think because from the very beginning of the relationship, like this last one, I know that if she's not at least trying to improve herself, there isn't anything that we can build on. There's nothing we can build together. So there's really no relationship foundation there.
yeah, I think that's the key, and that's what Chris has to figure out, and it requires a confrontation, which is essentially, are you going to change this stuff with me, and I'll change my stuff with you, or are we done? Because one thing to keep in mind, especially someone who's in self-development, and this is it's my gut instinct. It's not like solid fact, but from what I've seen and working with people for a very long time, is that the negative frame is stronger than the positive one. So if you take someone who's trying to improve themselves and you put them with someone who's a victim, the one trying to improve himself will be dragged down 9 times out of 10, opposed to the opposite of them pulling the other person around. The victim position is much more hardened, and so the frame is stronger, which means, I learned that when it came to like de-escalating criminal offenders who had become really agitated, is I just had to stay calm, stronger than they were staying agitated, and they would become calm. That was the easiest. All I had to do was not get agitated and wait, and they would have to just deflate. They just couldn't keep up. The stronger frame wins. And what I've found is somebody in a victim frame is usually stronger in that frame than, especially someone new to self-development or someone in the early difficult stages. They've still got a lot of self-doubt. They're struggling with it. And they're with someone who's just 100% negative. They're going to that's going to eat away at them, pull them down, distract them. There's going to be just logistical issues like, oh, she's having another drama. I've got to put aside my work again. And before you know it, you've relapsed. They've pulled you in with them. It's also, like you said, there's a measurement process here. When you end up with someone like that, is you go, okay, how did that happen? What's the feedback for me? Where did I meet her? How did I meet her? Did she get past my radar somehow? Or actually, have I got some work I still need to do because I've attracted someone like this, or been attracted to someone like, I found, especially before I met Lucy, there was this kind of weird phase where I was mostly like dating quite confident, healthy women, but I was still finding ones that were a little bit broken more attractive. For that reason, there's something just a little bit off there, that coach in me wanting to fix people. And one of the key conversations I had with Lucy was, look, I can't be your coach. That's not going to be good for us. Like, even if you need coaching, we're going to go find another coach. And I won't do any of that work because, and she fully agreed. I'm like, that's going to make things sick for us. There's going to be something unhealthy. And I think guys into self-development might struggle with this, is this urge to help other people can actually become an attraction. Like, oh, there's one I can help. And combined with, like, say she looks good and you have some things in common, you don't see it, like slipping in like an appendix to a report kind of thing. It just goes in there with it. And you start to realize, like, yeah, this person's a fixer-upper, and that's not my job. That's a psychologist's job. That's a coach's job. It's not my job. And so the key thing is, like, I'd like to point out to Chris is, I knowing Chris as I do, he's probably already talked to her about this, but to actually have a make or break conversation, either you turn around and you say, this is the relationship where I stop doing that stuff and I fix it, or we're done. This isn't like an ultimatum. You don't have to do it, It's just I can't be with you if you don't. For my own health.
I think that's exactly right. And it's very important to realize that everybody's different. She's going to be different than the girl that I met. She may be willing to change. She may be interested in changing. She may be sick of all this. But the key question Chris really needs to ask is she really actively trying to move forward in her life to something better? Or would I have to pull her along, spend half my energy just trying to keep her alongside me as we walk down the street? Because if she can't invest, you're investing for two. That's not going to work very long.
Yep. And that's tough. It's important not to be black and white about it. People have their ups and downs. Lucy's had like depression at some point. So I didn't expect her to be raging ahead like I was during that phase. But she treated me well during that phase. She worked on it. She went and saw the psychologist and everything. She went and got the medication. She didn't just give up, so she was always facing in the right direction. She just had a setback. And that's a key thing, is what do they do when they're really put to the test? If someone says they want to change and they want to face that same direction as you, what are they like when everything goes to shit? Because that's going to show you. And a key thing, especially when you're attracted to someone, like you just said, what are they actually doing? Not saying, but doing. Like, take the blinders off. Like, oh, they promised to change. What measurable behavioral change have you seen consistently take place for weeks or months that says, yeah, they are a different person now? Especially the other way around, which is woman with a guy and they're wanting to know if he's going to change. Guys are great at doing like a short burst kind of superficial effort, especially nice guys. They say, look, I need you to initiate sex more for like a week. They will. And then once they realize you like them again, they just button off, because they're never really doing it for genuine reasons. They're just doing it to regain your approval. So you have to give it a bit of time. If they say they're going to change and they start changing, don't get too excited yet. See if they can outlast the first burst of motivation, and see if they can outlast like your just getting your validation back, and keep this up. See if they're doing it for themselves. They have to be doing it for themselves. If they're doing it for you, then they're not really doing it.
They'll do just enough for you to get off their back, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be hard to know the difference.
Yeah, good question, Chris.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. There's still quite a few questions come through, but those are all the ones from our contributing members. And the free guys will go on a wait list. Hopefully we'll be able to do something with them later on next month. But yeah, some really fascinating stuff come through. Mike, you missed the first one. I'll send that through to you. It was about helping a family member who's got severe depression, and what's your role in that. But yeah, great questions, everybody, and please send more through, and Mike and I will hash them out and give you our rants and our opinionated
perspectives, whatever they're worth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Catch ya.
See you again soon.